Welcome one and all to Office Hours, where we've been answering your media and tech-related production questions every day since March of 2020. Jason Bache in Albuquerque, New Mexico is our reader today. Jason, what's our first question?
Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York asks, panel, thoughts on the new RodeCaster video NDI update? And it looks like Courtney Gooden's going to help us out here. Courtney?
I have not tried it, but here's the list of the new features. NDI support, iPhone integration with Rode Capture. So I guess that you can use your iPhone as a video input to the Rode video caster. PTZ control from the unit itself. Rounded corners, I guess, on those windows. Alex is going to like that. Advanced keying and audio-video linking. I'm not sure what that is, but those... that's a quick look at the improvements they made to it. So I don't have it, but RodeCaster video, I'm still stuck in the ATEM world, so I don't know if anybody else out here has been using it.
I wonder if they've been listening to Office Hours and heard Alex before talk about rounded corners. I've never seen that.
All about rounded corners.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never seen that on a product list before, so that's awesome. Let's go on to our next question.
Nicholas Bikini in Johnson City, Tennessee asks, through the QR code, I'm using Mimo Live software and also have an ATEM Mini Extreme Iso. Is there a way to incorporate Bible verses on the fly into my live stream for a house of worship?
Alex is going to help you out here. Alex?
So, Nicholas, the main question is, are you trying to do this on the fly as far as creating those quotes, or are you just trying to, before your event, line up 8 or 9 things that you're going to want to pop up? So those are two different problems. If you are using Mimo Live or the Extreme, remember that you can load these as stills with alpha channels, so with transparency, into the ATEM or into Mimo. So you could have it set up. In fact, with Mimo, you could have it set up on an iPad where you just hit the button for the next, this is quote 1, quote 2, quote 3, quote 4, and you just tap an iPad and it'll just pop up as a still using layer sets. So that's one way to do it. In the ATEM Extreme, of course, you can load these as media assets with alpha channels, and they'll just pop up. So that's the easiest way to do it. Now, what a lot of people would do, the most popular way to do it in House of Worship is a program called Pro Presenter. Pro Presenter is the standard across many, many House of Worships. It has all the tools. I mean, it has you can have it's lyrics for songs and stills that pop up, and it was built by people who were working in House of Worship for people who were building it. So it's really built for all those little bits and pieces that you may want to do. It's a couple $100, I think, a year or something like for the base unit. But then the way that I would probably do it, because I want to have a lot of flexibility and be able to change things and update them, so I'd probably just use Keynote. So Keynote for me would be another computer sitting there with Keynote, and I would just have it go in. You can, if you do everything over black and then just do a Luma key, you'll just be able to pop them out in either one of these solutions as an input. Mimo is probably a little harder because you get a screen share or something like that. You could also get more exotic by using something like a web page with HTML5, which you could probably vibe code at this point, that just says, I have a list of stuff here, and as I push them, you have one web page that you pushed a button that turned it on with HTML5 with an alpha channel that went to Mimo, and Mimo will let you just load HTTP, pages, and it would just see it with the transparency. So there's a couple different ways for you to do it. Hopefully, if any of those get close to what you're looking for, ask more questions, and we'll see what we can figure out.
Chris Fenwick, you want to weigh in?
Alex, I'm curious, does Pro Presenter have like a module that can pull Bible verses in?
It probably does. Like, I don't know for sure.
That's very interesting.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it probably lets you choose between which version, and you could probably type in what
New American Standard versus King James.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I was gonna get into like which one. Anyway, so all I can say is it's wine skins, not wine jars. That's all I'm gonna say. So if I see wine jars, that version is out the door. So
and then the other thing I was gonna say, Nicholas, is what is amazing, especially in churches, is the level of production has elevated so high that if you are not well steeped in what it takes to put on a clean presentation, it's very easy to look at something and say, oh, well, there must be just a fancy app for that. I'm sure there's just an easy thing. And I think that a lot of times in our society, and I'm going to be a little bit, especially in some of the younger people, it's like, well, what app do you use for that? There must be just a simple thing that just magically makes the magic happen. And it often isn't. It's a lot of work. And so, you say, and I think Alex hit the nail on the head. By on the fly, do you mean quick, grab Thessalonians, or is it drop in file 17 now?
Right.
So, but it takes a lot of work, and it's a lot of pre-production.
Here's the other thing, and I've worked with a lot of different house of worships of many, many different religions and denominations and everything else. And one thing that I found across the board, is that they'll let you come and tour. Like go to a couple other house of worships that, have really big congregations and look at what they're doing. And a lot of times they'll let you take a look at it. You say, oh, I'm working on this. They'll walk you through it and show you the video production. And I've learned a lot about I pretty much, anytime I end up somewhere in a different version of this, I'm always picking like, what are they doing there? But I will say the closest thing to a turnkey that's going to solve your problem is ProPresenter. Like that is going to be the because it was built for that thing. But it is, so that's the closest to an app for that you can have. But I would probably, if it was me, I would probably start with Keynote or an HTML. I'd vibe code an HTML page. I really want to do that now.
Liberty White?
So I'm glad Chris said what he said, because I have worked on the backside of like volunteering at church and being one of those people who operates the text. I was horrible at it. I can proudly say that. Hence I do what I do, but I'm curious as to if something like Canva, because, as Chris said, there's a little bit more modular pieces to it, but being able to have that, because it also has a presenter window, so you can quickly like grab certain things and pull in and being able to use something along those lines. I think
Canva will get you to a place where it looks really nice, really fast. Right. I find that once I want to edit it, like start moving it around, I find that to be very uncomfortable. Like Canva, I feel like you do one of the templates or you don't do one of the templates. But if you don't find exactly what you want, you're kind of, so the reason everybody uses, my wife uses Canva for a lot of stuff. And I asked her, like, why do you do this instead of Keynote? It's because I can just open something up, find something that's good enough, throw something in, it's going to look great. And for me, I like total control. So I want to have Keynote because I want to make sure that every little thing is doing what it needs to do.
Right. That's why I was thinking with what Chris said of just being able to, if you do that, the work that needs to, like, people underestimate the work that happens on the front end to ensure that here are the 2 or 3 templates that we go to. We go to this template for X, Y, and Z, doing it from that perspective. And Tony also mentioned Free Show as an alternative as well.
I think also as a technical lead, whether you're doing this for corporate video, local access television, I don't know if that exists anymore, or in a house of worship, a church, what you really want to do is reach out to the people that you know and offer up the position to be able to serve. There are many people that get their, that really get plugged in, and they will find a passion for getting involved. And when you have somebody in a seat that's passionate about it, you will be continually blessed by how much they bring to the presentation. I mean, it's when you get the right person in the right place, it's like, do your thing, go for it.
And one thing is to also, in your whatever organization you're in, think about making announcements that you're looking for people that are interested in working on graphics, or that we're looking for professionals willing to donate time to do this. There's a couple of us right now that are working with the local high schools in our area because we like video and we want them to be good at it. And so there's a couple of us that are kind of helping the high school teachers, do more than what they've had access to before. And I think that you can find people in the community that just want to do it. And want to be part of that and don't know how they would apply what they know there. And you may find that you can, and then what that does is having a handful of people like that in your organization ups the skill level of everybody, because they're just sitting next to them while they're working and looking at what tools they're using may be useful as well.
Hopefully that was helpful to you, Nicholas. Next question.
Raj Shandil in Los Angeles asks, have you used the Big 6 menu on the new FX2? And he includes a YouTube link.
And so far, nobody's raised a hand on this one, so I don't think anybody has used that particular menu on the new FX2.
It's hard to. I'm trying to. Oh, this is the. I can't. I just needed to pull it over here. Hold on, I can't. I have a monitor problem, so I can't pull it up. I don't know if anybody else can pull it up. It's just a much larger monitor for you to look at, so that it's easier to see. One of the problems with Sony is that
their on-camera ones are small.
Yeah, all the stuff is really hard to read. It's hard to figure out what's going on. If I don't have my phone connected to my phone to my camera, I rarely. Yeah, there. So Chris is showing it there. So this is a much nicer. You can actually click on it. So it's Sony's kind of clumsy way of trying to get closer to the interface that Blackmagic is.
Yeah, I was going to say it looked a little familiar.
It's like if Sony was like, I'm still attached to my past, but I got to go move into the future because everyone's like, this is so cryptic. And I'm someone who was deep into the Sony menus when they were just like scrolling and clicking for a long time. But you really, after a couple years of Blackmagic interfaces, you get tired of that, and even area interfaces. So the Sony one looks great. It looks like a great update to what is there. So anyway, it's bigger menus, easier to read, easier to get to what you need on a day-to-day basis. So it's a good update for Sony. Hopefully they'll roll that out into a wider number. You can't get to everything that way, and that's fine. But these are the things that you absolutely have to have quick access to, and it has always been a little bit quirky to do it on a Sony, and when you're kind of going fast. On the small Sonys, the big Sonys, you have more tools.
Small salute to the UI, user interface designers, because it can be important. I know I've been really frustrated in the field when I've been shooting and you can't get to the right menu because it's 6 levels down and affect the change you need to change. Hey, don't forget, we're taking your questions all the time. In fact, that's how this whole show runs. So if you want to get into this process, if you go to officehours.global/join and follow the breadcrumbs there, we'll send you an email within a day or two. Once you've done that, you can ask, vote on, and discuss the show's questions. There's a live show community that kind of runs in real time, and it's a fascinating place to hang out because there's even more information than you get on the regular show in the discussion that happens every day. Again, that's officehours.global/join. Next question.
Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York asks, morning, everyone. Does the panel know of an effective way to pull my Wyze Cam Pan V3 feed into a live virtual production pipeline, either to Zoom or at least into an HDMI or SDI workflow?
Courtney Gooden's going to help you out here. Courtney?
Well, there's a couple of ways you can go. You can, if you have anything that has an HDMI output and has a browser on it, you can, like one of these little, $130 PCs, you can go to Wyze Cam, Wyze.com, mycam.wyzecam.com, and you can pull up once you log in. And if you have, I think you have to pay the monthly fee to get live feeds on there. You can get one live camera, I think, for free. But you can see any of your live cameras that are online in your local area network. And then you could just take the HDMI output out of that small computer or Raspberry Pi. Another cheap way to do it is with a Fire Stick TV 4K. You can probably do this on the Apple TV as well, where there's there's an app on Amazon called TinyCam, TinyCam Pro, which is probably the best way to do it. It lets you view all your Wyze cams on the Fire Stick full screen. And so that's one way you can get it out. And of course, the HDMI output of that Fire Stick 4K then can be fed into a switcher and put up live. Now, be aware that the live stream from Wyze Cams is slightly delayed. So you will have a delay. It won't be in lip sync with anything else. It'll be in lip sync with the audio from that Wyze Cam, but not with anything else because it's usually a second or two behind in real time. Here's my front porch in the Wyze app right there and 2 other cameras that are turned off. But I could bring those in just as you saw right now, full screen into an ATEM Mini. So that's one way you can do it. So look for that. Also, the Amazon Alexa will support vocal call up of those cameras once you link it to your Amazon Alexa account and you enable the Wyze Cam skill on Amazon Alexa, then that way you can then just call for any camera and have it come up. I don't know if you'll be able to control the PTZs. You probably will be, but there's such a delay when you try and pan right, and then it'll pan right, then pan left, and then it'll pan left. You're not going to control it in real time using that app.
Next question.
Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada asks, Alex Lindsay, when you tested the Voyage Audio USB mic, were you able to record video at the same time, and does it work through a hub so you could also have an SSD drive connected as well?
Alex, what say you?
It is. It does. I don't know if it works through Hub or not. I haven't tried that. You definitely can record video at the same time. So you can start up the app. So this is the Voyage. The Voyage makes its own app. I don't have it in front of me right now, but you plug. So the cool thing about the Voyage, to back up a little bit, the Voyage mic. This is the. I think this is the Dante version of it. It happens to be on my desk. So this is the Voyage mic. So this is a second order. Put it in front of my eyes. This is a second order ambisonic mic, and these are becoming more important because the new Apple Spatial Audio format is all based on ambisonic, and so it's going to be more and more important to understand how ambisonic works. We'll talk a lot more about it as we go forward. This one's Dante, so this one's PoE powered. And I can hook it up to my Scorpio, and you got to have a little powered switch in there, but it works great. And then, so you can take this into the field, but the easier one to take into the field, if you just want to grab environments, is your phone and the USB version of this. So there's a USB version, it's USB-C in the bottom, and you plug it into your phone, and you open up your phone, and it just has 8 channels that you can record right into the phone. This one, what's cool about the Dante one is it has a DSP inside, and you can do 5.1 or 7.1 or whatever, and it will do the conversion for you in here and just deliver those channels. But the USB one, as far as getting a USB-A format of just raw out of the mic, it's pretty awesome. What I did is I got into the habit of taking the USB version, and I have it on the end of a little light stand, a little one that folds up nicely, and I put it into a quiver, like a quiver that you take with your bow and arrow, and I just go hike into the woods, and if I hear something that I think is cool, in 2 minutes I have my phone open, and I can, less than 2 minutes, 30 seconds, I can have the phone open, the mic up, and I can be recording. And so it's a really, really cool way to collect sounds and to collect ambient sound there. I don't see any reason why it couldn't work with the SSD drive. I just don't know in their app whether the SSD drive whether you can see it, like whether you can point to it is the only question that I have. I don't know if their app does that. The audio files are not very big, so I don't know if I'd worry too much about it. I mean, I buy phones that are as big as hard drive as I can find. So I have 1 terabyte. I'm at about 600 gigs out of a 1 terabyte after 2 years or whatever. So anyway, I haven't tried to do it to the SSD drive, but I have tried to record, and it does record. Because at first I was complaining about it to them, and they were like, "Well, why don't you just turn the video on?" So you can just turn it on, hit record, and then go over to your app and do that. Now I don't know if you could do that with the Blackmagic version because it has a lot of audio tools, and so it may be more problematic there. We should all send in requests for Blackmagic to support up to 8 channels in the Blackmagic camera app. That would make all of this much easier.
Don't forget, tonight is one of our special shows. We have one at 6 p.m. Pacific today. Chris Stone of Cast Ahead is going to be talking about transforming long-form content into impactful shorts. I know there's a lot of activity among that. We're doing some of that on the show here using Opus Clip to pull pieces out of the longer form content. So it's something a lot of people are doing. And if you want to learn about the approach they're taking at Cast Ahead, tune in, I guess, 11 hours after we finish here. It's tonight or tomorrow if you're in a different part of the world. But tonight, a special show. Next question.
Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York asks, "Morning, everyone. What are the panelists' thoughts on the new Zoom Graphics Toolkit open beta? Any real-world experience as of yet?"
Alex Lindsay, what do you think?
No real world experience yet. I've been playing with it a fair bit, and I'm pretty excited about it. So one of the things about it, I pull it up, but I'm having a monitor problem here. So, but we'll get into it, and I think we're going to end up doing a lab now that everyone can get a hold of it. And so we'll do this in after hours, somewhere in the next week or two. As we get closer to Zoomtopia, we're hoping to see a whole bunch of announcements. So we're kind of waiting to see what all lands and what happens there. But with the graphics toolkit. Now, what's really interesting is it has tons of access, stuff that you used to have with Zoom OSC. It has tons of access to all the data that's inside of a Zoom meeting. So polls and comments and questions and all that, it can easily grab onto. And then it gives you a lot of tools to refine the look and feel of that. And then it's able to deliver that out to whatever. It's designed not to work inside of Zoom, but to really work with whatever editing or live system that you're running. So it's there. What's cool about it is that it's all done in a way that you can literally use AI to say, this is what I want it to look like, and this is where I want it to be. And it's because you can cut and paste the code right into it, you're able to very quickly put something together where you don't necessarily have to write it all yourself and really build those designs out. So there's some things that obviously you have sliders and click pull downs and everything else too, but you can get to things very quickly. And again, this is going to be a really interesting way to approach the problem. So we will definitely be doing more about it. I haven't had a chance to use it in an actual project, but I've been playing with it a bit, and we will definitely do some labs in the next week or two.
Next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas asks, "What are the key qualities to evaluate a good video edit in a feature-length film?"
Interesting question. Courtney Gooden's going to start us out here. Courtney?
I think a good video edit draws you into the drama of the film without you knowing it. If you look at any of the films of Frank Darabont, like Shawshank Redemption, masterpiece in video editing and camera movement, where the camera movement and the dissolves and the edits are seamless, and it heightens the drama. It's quite amazing. If it doesn't take you out of the film and you don't notice it, if you start to notice the editing too much, then it takes you out of the storyline and pulls you up, and you realize, hey, I'm watching a movie. And one of the worst examples of that is this one from Oliver Stone, Natural Born Killers, 1994. Take a look at that film if you want to see some horrible editing. It was one of the first films that was edited on Lightworks, digital editing platform, and they just went crazy about it. And they cut between every scene. It cuts constantly between different forms of media. It'll go film, videotape, Super 8, black and white, color, hand-drawn animation, during the scene. It just keeps cutting between all these different media because, hey, the story is about how the media made these two people like a Bonnie and Clyde characters. And that is a form of editing that just draws me out, and I become so enraged at the editing that I quit watching the movie completely.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, for the most part, it should be invisible. Like if someone's editing well, you're not thinking about the edit, and so a lot of that is, and I will say that there's a lot of technical things that people can talk about, but I think that the great editors that I've worked with, they just feel when it's right to go to the next thing. Like they see what they have there, and obviously they'll tell you that there's certain things they'll pick up the pace or they'll slow it down. But a lot of what that is them feeling the story, and what needs to happen next, down to, in some cases, down to the frame. Like if you'll see someone, like I've worked with sat behind some editors, and you'll see them do something over and over again until it just flows from one to the other one. And it is a matter of like click, 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 frame, 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 frame. And they get to right where they want. And then it feels nice and smooth as it goes from one to the other. And you don't really think about it, but it should be the story's happening and that all. But I don't think that there's obviously there's lots of technical ways of talking about that. But the best editors that I worked with that I've sat behind, it feels like they're just finding that feel as they watch it.
Chris Fenwick?
I totally agree, of course. And Courtney, it was interesting. You said it should be invisible, and then you said and it heightens the drama and stuff, which is the real balance. You do want to take somebody on a journey, but you don't want to let them know you're taking them there, you know? You also mentioned the natural born killers. I think that there's a very interesting, senior thesis type thing to be written about how technology has changed the way we edit, and not just the physicality of it, but just the way things end up looking. I've been using After Effects for like 30 years. And in the early days of After Effects, to render a little 10-second thing, I mean, sometimes that was a walk away, like, oh, let's go to lunch. I'm rendering a 10-second animation. And now, we whip out things, 10-second lower thirds in no time. And so, but in those early days of really slow computers, when we were asking them to do a lot of things, it was so painful and expensive, time-wise, to edit or to render little tiny things, that I think our patience in the edit suite changed. And so it's like, we'll just make it 10 seconds long. Just make it 5 seconds long. And then you start editing those things into the pieces that you're cutting, and you realize the overall pacing of the piece that you're changing, because I didn't have the patience to render out a full 1 second dissolve. So maybe a cut is fine, or maybe a jump cut, whatever. But I think there's an interesting story to be told by analyzing how technology changes and then how that affects what we see on the screen. And you could just talk about pacing. And it's something I've wanted to do for a long time.
Nigel.
For those of us who suffer with a little insomnia, we find ourselves trawling through the streamers at 1 o'clock in the morning looking for something to watch. And I can watch almost anything except where the editing on the dialogue is so bad it feels unnatural. And I don't know how to describe it. I don't have the vocabulary, but they get the pacing wrong. So it's slightly too long. And you know that the editing is off because the dialogue doesn't seem to flow.
Alex, you wanted to come back in?
For a great movie that I think that the editing is part of the show, like part of what you're doing, and it's very, very hands-on, is Man on Fire. If you want to see some editing that is part of the show, like they're adding energy, they're showing things, there's a lot of effect to it and everything else. The editor is as much the story as any of the characters. And I think it's done well. I don't think it's done well very often that way, but it is I'd love to see what Chris thinks of Man on Fire. It's a Denzel Washington movie that was not super successful, but I like it. So, and I love the edit, that happens there. The other thing I would say is when we say feature length film, my prediction is that there'll be almost no feature length films within 10 years. That genre is going to become more and more difficult. I'm not going to say that there's none, but it will be a small part of our business as we go forward. It just doesn't pan out for the streamers, and I don't think we're going to see theatrical releases in the way that we have in the past. I know that for me, I have it really, unless I'm on a flight, like I just watched Black Bag, which was actually pretty good, with Steven Soderbergh, but that's the last I saw that movie. I haven't seen a feature length film for so long. Like I just realized I watched it and it was only an hour and a half, and I was like, wow, I'm just not used to watching anything that long anymore. so anyway, it's just because the business model for the streamers doesn't look that way. It's better. Like Murderbot is now 22 minutes or 26 minutes or whatever, and you're seeing that's the beginning of the it's going to be very hard to get people to spend money over an hour because they can't maintain subscriptions, and that's where a lot of them are going.
Tony Scott. Man,
watch anything by Tony Scott.
That says a lot.
I mean, you like Tony Scott, Domino, and so many other ones. I love Tony Scott, but Man on Fire, Tony Scott, and Denzel Washington. I mean, Christopher Walken. So a lot of great actors, a lot of great performances. It's good. It's a good movie.
And if you're interested in this, Paul, one of the seminal works was, and has been for a long time, Walter Murch's In the Blink of an Eye, and he talks about the theory of cutting things. It's a while since he wrote that, so his thoughts may have changed a little bit. But I will say that when I read that in my youth as an aspiring editor, the amount of detail and time he puts into deciding on where a single cut is placed really affected me. I mean, he really made the point that Alex made earlier, that literally 3 frames back, 3 frames forward can make a difference in everything, according to him. And that was big for me. Also, when I'm doing these audiobooks now, I'll edit it once just with voice, and then I realize I've got music coming in, I've got sound effects coming in, I have different performances from different characters, and every single cut in the whole piece is changing because I have more pieces to work with. So I just find editing endlessly fascinating for those kinds of reasons. Alex?
Jack Cannon said, I just participated in a 4-day film festival, and the feature-length films had very few people in the seats after the 1 hour mark. It's just, there's a different, and again, my whole thing is, it's not that I want to tell a smaller story. I want to see series. Like, I'm much more interested in a series. And I was talking to a writer, because I've mentioned it before, it's a couple of years ago. And what he was talking about, he goes, I'd much rather work on a series. A, it's more regular work. But B, the big thing was, he goes, I can do things in a series. You give me, 12 episodes. I got 12 hours to work with, not 2 hours to cut everything down, into. I can sit there and expand the conversation. I can have much longer story arcs. I can do all these other things. So it's not a matter that we're actually having less content. It's just that by making it it's basically a 12-hour movie in 1 hour bites.
Especially considering you can't get somebody to watch a 90-minute movie, but they'll binge watch 10 episodes of whatever.
I watch. Yeah. I mean, what's funny is that I don't want to watch them.
Why won't you just watch a 90-minute movie if you'll sit there for 10 hours?
I think I watched. My wife and I watched 2 hours of the Wire last night. One episode was what we were committing to, but then we couldn't. Like, oh my gosh, I have to figure out what just happened.
It's good storytelling. You need to know what happens next.
And by the way, if you want to see story arcs, it's violent and rough. But The Wire is probably some of the best writing that was ever done on TV. Like, it's just unbelievable.
Especially considering that first season is not HD yet, and it's still, you'll watch it even though it's standard def.
It's just
Nigel, you want to come back in on this?
Yeah, I was just watching an interview with the writer of the original books that are the Thursday Night Murder Club, which comes out on Netflix this week, and he said he's faced Spielberg and Columbus made the movie, he did, and he said lots of questions about why there was never a theatrical release, and his answer was because you don't go to the theater anymore.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was reading something with Chris Columbus, the director who did the Harry Potter, I think it was Azkaban he did, and he was saying, I had 3 more things I desperately wanted to say in scenes from the book that I knew would be fabulous. I had the actors, I had everything, but we couldn't do it because we were constrained by the time. So I think a lot of directors, one of the reasons to emphasize Alex's point, that directors are moving away from those big monster movies and trying to get more serialized, is that directors get really excited by their material and want to tell more, and they just can't because the movie is time constraining to them. So it's an interesting question. Thank you for it. Let's move to our next question.
Our own Liberty White in Atlanta, Georgia asks, what are the top 3 keys to building a strong online community? So much is changing, tools and platforms, and there is a lot of noise. How do you successfully build?
Liberty White's going to start us off here. Liberty, hi.
Hello. Yes, I was thinking about this because 2 quick stories. One, just from the marketing world, and where business is even going. Brands need to. That's why they have influencers. They're trying to borrow other people's communities to help drive engagement, purchases, etc. That's one side of it. Alexis Ohanian just invested, not him alone, but the vibe coding app. A couple weeks ago, just got a big investment. They've developed an app for people who want to build anything, you can vibe code in this app. And I remember reading a breakdown where someone had said, well, one of their founders is Riley Brown, which is one of the top voices in AI on YouTube and platforms. And he's got 1 million followers across them. So you're investing once again in distribution and community. So I've just been pondering this as, in order to really grow and succeed in all of this noise, all of these different platforms, how important community is and what are some of the keys. And I was hoping Nigel, I'm putting you on the spot, would chime in on this as well, because community is, it's easy to think about community in, crafting, technology. etc. But there are some other places where, well, if you're B2B, how do you build community there? So throwing it out as like, what are the top 3 things you think have to be present in building community?
You successfully baited Nigel being right after Alex. Alex?
Yeah, I've been doing online communities. I've been part of online communities or building them for maybe 30 years at this point. And so there's a couple of things about it that I find that are important. I don't know if it's 3 or 6 or 2 or whatever, but the first thing is to really get your head around that content is not king, community is king, and content is the honeypot. You have to have content. That content is what draws people into that community. The next thing is that you have to have people able to contribute and have an ongoing conversation anytime they want to. So an asymmetrical conversation that's going to occur. Right now, I would say that the number one platform for this is Discord. Like we see companies, we see organizations, we see, a lot of times people thought it was gaming or it's weird or whatever. We adopted it after looking at many different things. We adopted Discord. I don't know if I would recommend making as many channels as we have, but I'm in probably 25 or 30 Discord communities, so I get to see how different people approach them. I like ours in the sense that you can drill down into something very quickly. Because we try to stay away from politics and religion, we have a tendency not to have as many free-form conversations on ours as others do. That are just kind of like cool things that you might see, or opinions, or tech, or debate, or whatever that are in some of the other ones. But that does allow the community to have some of those conversations. I think that real time and then interaction. Obviously, we do that every morning. But those are some of the things that I think are important, is being able to interact, have some cohesiveness, know what you're talking about. Like if I could build another one that was about politics, and then we just talk about politics all the time. That's fine. You just have to have people who understand how to do that, like adults, which is difficult for most people. So that's it's because it's hard is why we don't take it on. Like we focus on the tech area. So understanding what the limits are of what you're going to talk about in that community, but have something you're going to talk about. One of the things that finding things that have people do things together is really, really important. In Pixel Core, we had this thing where we were able to get all the apps for everybody, like all the apps that you would need were all available to our members. And this is before subscriptions. In fact, it may be connected to how subscriptions occurred in this industry, because we were selling Autodesk and Adobe and everyone else on this idea that people just pay a little bit every month instead of the whole thing. And I had lots and lots of meetings about that. So of us, our goal was you pay $50 a month and then you just get all these apps, and you can't use them commercially. But what it allowed us to have is a common set of apps that all of us could use. And then what we would do is do challenges. We had these things called the Cube Challenge. And the Cube Challenge was we were in some conversation at some late night with John Foster, who's passed, but he was one of my we would sit there and talk, and I said I could teach anybody how to do 3D if I just describe in cubes, make an ice cube, a stone cube, a fleshy cube, an icy cube, and whatever that is. If I just had you do a series of cubes, you would understand how to do 3D. And so I started giving you a description. So I would just give a 1-paragraph description about a cube. And it was like a leather cube, or it was a stone cube like the Rosetta Stone, or it was something else. And everybody worked on it. And but here's the thing. They weren't following instructions. They were all doing their own version of the cube, but trading notes back and forth. And because it wasn't something that they were ever going to use anywhere other than our community, it was something that they were very comfortable just telling people, well, this is how I did this, and this is how I did the stitching, and this is how I did everything else. And so they were all sharing. Now, in the surface, what it looked like is that we were creating, that they were learning how to do 3D, but deeper, we were building community. Like that's the thing that we were all doing together. It's kind of like the same thing here is that on the surface we're answering your questions, but the deeper part of office hours is that we're building this huge community that's sharing information and ideas back and forth.
So I
Nigel?
appreciate you saying, sorry, Bill.
No,
Appreciate you
go ahead.
saying like the challenge part of like something that you were building together, because like that's what we're doing with She Learns AI. Like we did the week of events in Atlanta, we did Cannes, we're going to go to New York, and I'm trying to find the stickiness to make sure that we're saying we're creating this safe space for people to learn, but then having that one thing that they can work on.
But if you have like a weekly challenge of like, hey, let's go build an app, or let's build something else in this, platform or whatever, and then trade notes. Like we tried to all build the app. Like we want to build it might be a DMX, or I don't know what it'd be for you, but I mean, for us, it might be a DMX controller for, lighting on an iPad or whatever, or on an Android device for Courtney. But we could do something where, and again, it doesn't have to be something that is, I guess the process of it, you learn an incredible amount because everyone's doing it their own way. They talk, if they were comparing prompts, if they're comparing approaches, are they comparing, how they, and talking about that, you'd learn a lot, and doing it. And then you can think about doing things like, we do a lot of things where you just open up Zoom. I mean, we have After Hours, which is open 24/7, but you could have, 6-hour things together where, it might be 3 or 4 people. I mean, I think that one of the most powerful community building things that we did was building the pie. We called it we still talk about No Pie Left Behind. And, and so we worked on it, and working with Tony Mobley and having him figure it all out and do it all and have us all doing that together that we should replicate that more often. We haven't, to our detriment, is do more things like that where and it wasn't a lot of people. It was 10 or 15 people with a bunch of people watching, of us willing to put multi-camera together and put something together and make it work. And we had people who had gotten ahead, who had figured a bunch of this stuff out. We had Jonas, who was written, giving us feedback as well, who had written this software that was all to get Playout B running on our Raspberry Pis, right? And we had to put the Raspberry Pi together from scratch. For those of you who haven't seen that, it was long ago on a Saturday. It's probably still somewhere on maybe my page. I don't know. But anyway, the point is that it was like 4 hours, and it was incredible. Like we all felt connected in a way that we didn't before. And I think doing more of that is something we should do. But I think that is a huge part of building community.
Nigel, you wanted to get in on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has sort of been said, but we always operated on the idea that great, or what Vic in the chat calls compelling content, creates great conversations create communities. And that you sort of have to go through that waterfall to create the community. If you don't have the content, that doesn't create the conversations. I think the big debate currently going on, at least in the commercial and business world, is how do you promote your great content? And there was a huge drive in the last couple of years to move away from paid and move really to unpaid as a way to drive visibility of that content. And I will tell you, there is a move going back the other way.
I was going to say, yeah.
This idea that unpaid is the best way to do it. And you could argue to some extent the US president achieved his current position due to unpaid. So there's a huge amount of focus there. But you can look at case studies, and I think there's, again, I don't mean to be political, but the Crackle Barrel one is a great example of where, had they deployed some paid media to surround that launch, rather than hoping that unpaid would do it for them, they wouldn't be in some of the mess. So I think in a commercial environment, we're really starting to look how that balance is shifting back, because we just don't necessarily trust unpaid to deliver anymore.
Alex, you wanted to make the last comment?
Yeah, the only thing I say is the Cracker Barrel one, I think is going to be, they're going to write, we don't know how it's going to turn out either. Like I think I tweeted out, number one is I can't believe they did that. They've torched their brand. Number two is I've never been to Cracker Barrel because it seemed too quaint. so I was like, I've never gone.
Double-edged sword.
I've never been to Cracker Barrel because I look at the logo and I go, meh, and it's not really me. And so I get where they were going, but I don't know if they really understood their market. And to Nigel's point, that transition had to be a lot cleaner than what it was. And I think it's gotten out of hand, in that process. But I think that one of the things that I think is really important also in community is figuring out, and we haven't done it here, and I think we've been successful at it, but like with Pixel Core, one of the first things that we did, and here what we did is we were very hardened of this is how you do what we do. In PixelCore, we charged money immediately, and that was it. Just it weeded out a lot of stuff. We've been successful at doing. My challenge on this one was to not do that, and we've been successful at it. But it's way harder to do a free community than it is to do a paid one. You have, and so that's something to always kind of consider, because it just gets the serious folks, gets the non-serious folks out of the way. It's less about the money, although the money wasn't bad. PixelCore at its height was making $100,000 a month on membership, so it was so that it does make everything easier, but also everyone there is invested, and the key is figuring out whether it's free or not free, or work or not work. How do you keep people invested? And that means they gave something, and you got to figure that out.
Speaking of community, if you want to help support this one, if you value what we do here, there are a few ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's easy and free. Volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer and become part of the team that makes all this possible. Or you can simply donate if you'd like to. We are a 501c3 at officehours.global/donate. All right, next question.
Coming in from the QR code, Emmanuel in Accra, Ghana asks, what are your recommendations for an election management system in software and a touch screen for broadcast? Had some beginner experience with Xpression.
Alex, you have some
Well,
thoughts?
once you said Xpression, I thought, if only we knew someone from Ross. So Ross makes Xpression. I was like, we do. So I reached out to Bo Cordell, who works for Ross, and I asked. I just sent him your question, Emmanuel, and Bo came back and said, I don't know of any off-the-shelf election management software solutions, but since you mentioned Xpression, take a look at the tools that Ross is building using Dashboard and Touchscreen Xpression. They work with a lot of so Ross works with a lot of broadcasters in election coverage, and you may want to look for the Ross Video Election Guide, which you can see a PDF that talks about the tools and services. Feel free to reach out to Bo Cordell on Discord if you'd like to know more. So if you're in our Discord, Bo Cordell knows a lot about this, and I would recommend it.
Next question.
Coming in from the QR code, Tim McDaniel in North Fort Myers, Florida. This was from a few days ago. Clarification for poorly formed question. Blackmagic Ultrastudio Extreme 4K sending key fill and audio into production pipeline from graphics computer. Our Ultrastudio died. Blackmagic Media Player 10G might be a replacement, but not released yet. Are there any other options?
Alex is going to help you out. Alex,
there are other options, but probably none that are affordable. I mean, so I think that the Blackmagic getting another Extreme 4K is probably the solution you're going to do right now. I wouldn't grab a Blackmagic media player right out of the gate, even if it was shipping right now. I'd let it go into the market. Any new hardware is a little bit challenging. Sometimes the first versions of Blackmagic stuff can take a little time to settle in. A lot of times the things the advantage of Blackmagic has always been that it things may not last as long as other things, but it's half as much. So you can just buy another one. so just buy two. So anyway, so I think that is, but I don't think you're going to find something else that's as affordable as the Ultrastudio Extreme 4K that is going to do the same thing.
All right, next question. Deep pockets warning.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas asks, what are the use cases for Leitz Hugo lenses? And includes a link that's going to cost all the money.
Well, if you buy the whole set, I think it probably will. Alex, what's your thought about
the
these?
funny thing is that when you click on it in B&H, and again, I'm having some monitor problems here today, but when you click on it in B&H, one of the things that's right below it is business financing options are available. So, and it's very, very clear that this item cannot be returned. Like you cannot, and this item also cannot be ordered on the web. It's an in-studio. You have to go to B&H to order this. So I don't know how much it costs. It looks like a nice lens. When lenses get to be this expensive, usually I lean much more towards, hey, let's rent that lens. So those are, you rent lenses that are expensive, and you buy lenses that are good enough.
Yeah, it sounds like they're in the game with Zeiss and some of the others, where if you get a whole series of Zeiss primes because you are a serious cinematographer, you're looking at serious money to invest in that. It is somebody who is very serious about that. I don't know what the cost of these Leitz lenses are, the Leitz Hugo lenses.
I mean, they look like they're not that bad. I mean, they're like $15,000 each, a lot of them. I mean, it can get
the full
so much
series
worse.
is 10 lenses, I think.
It can get so much worse. But yeah, it looks like the 50 millimeter T2, which is not as nice as the 1.5, is 14,600 on B&H. So these are real, real lenses, or at least they're charging real lens prices. I think the most I've personally bought a lens for has probably been about 35,000. Once I get to about that number, I'm like, okay, I need to rent those things. So like Ingenue lenses and so on and so forth. That's what you get from a rental house. Those are $70,000, $80,000 lenses. And so, but I would say that today, most of the time, it'd be hard to get me to spend more than $6,000 or $8,000 on a lens, for day-to-day work. And then, because I just don't think I would use it often enough to make it worth not renting lenses is not particularly expensive because they last for decades. And so it usually doesn't make sense to buy a really, really expensive lens. When I spent that $35,000, I actually spent a couple $100,000 on lenses. We used them 3 to 5 times a week. That made it worth not renting them. But if you're not going to use them at least 2 or 3 times a week, for what you're doing, just rent them.
I guarantee you there's somebody out there right now working on how to adapt that to their iPhone. It's just a crazy world.
You just got to rent it. Just rent it for a day and put it on your iPhone. Beast isn't
B-Script?
B-Script are the ones that I think have really they're the ones that have been working on putting big lenses onto them.
Yeah, but they've got like EF mounts. So the question is, will this, if you order this in the PL,
I think they have a PL version too, or someone maybe adapted a PL to an EF and then put it onto the phone. Yeah.
Somebody will do it. You can guarantee it. Nice discussion. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia asks, Liberty White, please talk about the amazing AI work you were doing.
Please, please, please regale us.
Yeah, and it's funny. I guess it kind of started even when Alex was asking earlier, just where you been? So I'd say probably last year around March, just started to delve more into, thanks to office hours, but just publicly doing more tutorials, training around artificial intelligence for everyone, but primarily helping women just figuring out how to use it in their workflows, in their businesses. So as I shared in the community talk, which is part of why I wanted to ask that question to you all, is that we've been building community. So Women in AI Futures, we've done a whole week of activations and trainings, and started in Atlanta, went all the way to Cannes in June, France, which was my first time to Europe. So it was fantastic there. And then now I'm going to do a pop-up in New York. So just the whole idea of like gleaning my learnings from office hours, and because it's different when you're on the other side, because if anyone remembers last month, the president had shared the AI action plan. So there were so many different areas, but one that's important to us is the upskilling, and how do we help people to reskill and be prepared for, we're calling it the future of work, but it's what's happening in the workforce right now. There's so many changes taking place. So that's the work that we're doing to make sure that people have the skills they need right now, and then moving forward to in the future. And I was on Conversation with Tony Mobley last week. So for the full debriefed story, you can check it out there. But it's exciting times. It's also a lot of work, but then putting all these different skill sets into play.
It's excellent. We always feel lucky when you can take a little time and drop back and see us. We miss you when you're gone. Next question.
Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona asks, has anyone had experience with FilmHub? We are looking into options for distribution for our documentary, and we were recommended filmhub.com.
Alex, do you have any experience with them?
I haven't had any experience with FilmHub. I think that it depends on how long your documentary is. I think that if it's a full-length film documentary, you really want to look at the avenues of whether it's, depending on what you think the film quality is and so on and so forth, looking at the streamers. The streamers buy a lot of these because they're looking at trying to fill up their space. And so I would think about that before I went to an online platform to do this, is look at, and it might not be the Amazon, Netflix or whatever, but there's lots of other online streamers that have business models around this. So I probably would lean that direction. 100 minutes is what Jack said. So I think that, I don't think that and what Mickey said is that, go to festivals and their and their project markets with your own sales agent instead of hiring a distributor. Have a distributor approach you and pay you, and not the other way around. And yeah, I would probably look for someone to buy it up. And again, this is where the festival circuit and everything else makes a lot of sense. It's interesting now when I talk to folks about it in the industry, they're all looking for social, how big is your YouTube channel? And is that related? Is the documentary you did related to your YouTube channel where you think you got some flow to make that actually work?
Liberty?
And just to add on to what Alex shared, Jack, I'm wondering too if where you are, if you go to the economic development arm, whether it be the city one or the state, and see what options there might be available to help you to get into those festivals. Because there's typically some kind of incentive, some kind of grant, something, and or they can help you make those, like, that's their job. Their job is to make sure that you succeed and helping you, putting you in the rooms and email introductions, etc. So just looking at that as another support arm for you as well.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, with the RodeCaster video adding NDI, do you think it puts the ATEM Mini at a strong disadvantage?
Alex, what's your thinking?
No, not really. I think that the ATEM Mini is a different. It's a much more simple project thing to use, and I think that the RodeCaster video, I could be wrong, I think it's a little bit more expensive as well. So I think that what's nice about the Mini, I use the Mini on the tiny little Mini on the road, and just being able to plug everything into it, not think about any of the other things, and have it be totally self-contained is still a pretty valid solution. It's also just, I don't think people have any sense of how many of those minis are out there, but it is a massive ecosystem. And so I think that is part of the process. I think the RodeCaster is pretty great. I think that the problem that I have is that the software for the Mini is pretty useful. Like I played with the RodeCaster software a while ago when it first came out, and I was like, I can't use this. I'm not going to, and most of how I interact with the switcher is not through the hardware, it's through the software. And so I didn't think that it was something that I'd be using anytime soon. So whether it's on NDI or hardlined or whatever, I don't think that it would move the needle for me, at least.
Next question.
Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas asks, explain how filmmakers use the viewfinder such as this one, for example, and it's another Leitz Cine.
Courtney Gooden's going to help you out here. Courtney?
Well, of course, this helps out when scouting, especially if you're scouting locations or if you're in a new set that's been built on stage, because a viewfinder shows you the lenses that you have access to, and I think this one allows you to put the lenses on the viewfinder itself, the actual lenses that you're going to have access to during your shoot. And it shows them doing it. I think you can actually shoot stills through those lenses so that you can frame up your shots, you can plan your day around your coverage, and you can show what you're looking for to the camera operators, and to the director can go around and basically map out his vision of how the scene is going to be covered with a viewfinder that can record these different angles of the location. Let's say, like the time of day to see where the sun is. You can see various, how the buildings line up in the background, the depth of field, whether you want to see deep focus or shallow focus, those kinds of things that you can only see with a good viewfinder attachment that lets you see the actual lens on there. They have director's finders, you see them in movies for years where they portray the director, they're hanging around their neck and there's a little lens type thing, put it up and you can turn it, and it just basically adjusts a little crop box to show you what the field of view would be for a certain lens type. But that's not near as good as one of these director's finders that actually lets you mount the lens on a viewer and see what it looks like through that specific lens. So that's why it comes in handy. And that's why you see the big-time directors like Spielberg always using one of these to figure out where their camera's going to be to set up a shot for their various coverage.
Alex?
Yeah, and the big-time directors and ones that want to be big-time directors often use these a lot, and they are very efficient, and they're going to accurately tell you what you're looking at there. I think Mickey had pointed out this might be an EVF, but this is a director's viewfinder with an EVF. Oh, okay, yeah, it's got an EVF on it. So anyway, what I will say is that for those of us who don't have the big bucks or don't can't carry that around. A lot of us, to do framing, it's not the same, not as good, but a lot of us use things like Artemis Pro and CAD Rage on our phone, and you can say, I have this sensor and this lens, and it will give you that frame in your phone, and you take little pictures of it, and then you send it to people going, this is what I'm thinking. And so if you don't have if you have the money and the means and everything else, getting something bigger makes sense. But if you don't, these are little apps on your phone that do a pretty good job of figuring out framing.
Chris Fenwick?
Yeah, I was on a set a couple weeks ago in our DP. I don't know what the app was, Alex, but he was walking around with his phone, and he was like, did click, and he's like, okay, I'm going to go get the 85, and then he'd go back to the fancy box full of lenses. And
it is. I mean, everybody I work with has either CAD Rage or Artemis Pro. Like everybody has, or both. But and they'll be religious about one or the other. But it is literally every person that shoots with a camera has one or the other on their phone.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here today. Our specific thanks to our producers, all of you who put in questions into the process. We cannot run our show without your involvement. And as always, excellent questions, and thank you for making this show possible. To the panelists who come here and freely share their years of experience, thank you all very much. And to the amazing back-end crew, that quiet army of people who are behind the scenes doing all sorts of things, more tasks than you can possibly imagine, doing everything from literally pushing the buttons that switch the show from somewhere in the world to getting ready for something like the special show that we'll be doing tonight at 6 p.m. Tremendous thanks to everybody in the back-end crew. Our Talak Traversal today, if you had been traveling around to get the information that you've been privy to today, you would have traveled 29,000 miles. That's 47,000 kilometers, 231 million bananas for scale. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place.
Top of the hour, Fenwick mentioned Schadenfreude, and I've got to mention that there is an antonym, which is Freudenfreude, which is taking pleasure in the joy and success of others.
Freudenfreude.
I have Freudenfreud
like
for
a pack of
Liberty's
snacks.
success.
No fun at all.
I think we have to have a shirt that has Schadenfreude and then has it crossed out. It has Freudenfreud.
Your Freudenfreud is showing.
Schadenfreude on one side and Freudenfreud on the back. Where are you coming or going? It's a path through life.
So awesome. Thanks, Beckham. Thanks, y'all. Great job, Bill, Jason.
Thank you, Liberty. Great to have you here. Always.